Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the What's in My Head podcast. Today I am joined by Maxwell Atoms, the creator of Con Carne, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and so many fantastic shows that I really enjoyed. The kid Maxwell, how are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Man, it is a fantastic day here in Florida. It's rainy and shit, so my people are cool because my people tend to sunburn. We wilt in the sun, so I treasure days like today, especially because I get to talk to somebody that had a huge influence on me at such a young age with Billy and Mandy. We'll get to Billy and Mandy in just a few, man, but I really would like to know, at what point in your life did you really realize that, man, I could take these drawings that I do and turn them into a profession down the road? Do you remember that initial spark that you had?
Uh, I think it's something that I wanted to do for a very long time. Like when I was a little kid, I still have this like book from elementary school that says that I wanted to be a doctor like my dad and a cowboy and an astronaut. But really, it was always something to do with drawing. And I think I was always worried, and I guess my parents were always worried that you couldn't actually make a living doing that.
Yeah.
But somewhere in high school, I decided I wanted to, I got really into animation, and that's what I wanted to do. And for whatever reason, my parents decided to support me, so I went off to art school.
Well, it's always a good thing, man, because I hear so many stories about people that choose a creative path and their parents or their friends like, oh man, you're not going to make any money on this. It's a pipe dream. Do something else. Do something that's got a trade or something that's got longevity, like that doctor or even a cowboy, man. John Wayne made it work for so long. I mean, that could have
True.
been Maxwell the cowboy. I mean, who knows what we could have got. But I
Yeah, years later, they did come back and say that they expected me to move back home, and I just never did.
well, at least you won out in the end. I mean, it could have went one or two ways, but you had some hit shows.
True.
But so you're a little kid, you're getting pushed by your parents. As soon as when you get to high school and stuff like that, like they started getting behind you and all this other stuff. What were some of those shows that you would draw influence from? Not only just drawing, but like would open up your imagination back in the day.
Oh, geez, I was into pretty much everything. Like there wasn't as much animation as there is now, but we really just had Saturday morning cartoons for the most part, and a little bit, before or after school. But yeah, my sister and I would just binge watch from 6 in the morning till noon or whenever the after school special type stuff would come on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, everything from the Smurfs to all the Hanna Barbera stuff. I guess my favorites were really like old Hanna Barbera and Warner Brothers cartoons. Like that was what did it for me back in the day.
Yeah. Was there any one or two that might have stuck out just a little bit more that maybe pushed you towards, oh man, I started looking at that animation a little bit more deeply as a
Yeah, I mean Looney Tunes was
yeah.
huge for that. I think, and I think for Hanna Barbera, it was as a kid I really loved it, but as I got older, I appreciated just how like the simplicity of it, just how they figured out a way to make things, I guess, on a budget.
It's crazy. Like I had this interesting way, I guess, of looking at animation before I started this podcast. And it wasn't until I started talking to a lot of the guys from the AKA studios, the guys that, did Ed, and Eddie and all that other stuff with Danny Antonucci and a lot of those artists. Um, I assumed you guys knocked out an entire episode in a week. I figured if we have a work week, in a regular industry like cooking and stuff, we have our day to days and we push stuff out and everything like that. So I assumed, and it was very cute when I told Mike Kubat this, and he just started laughing at me. He's like, "No, this shit is done 2 and 3 years ahead of time, and it's a slow process. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time." And then I started reading all of these books on animation. I started with Of Mice of Magic by Leonard Maltin and Jerry Beck, and then I'm reading one now, The Moose That Roared. It was about Jay Ward Productions and Rocky and Bullwinkle and all
Hmm.
this other stuff. And just hearing the stuff that you guys had to go through, being animators, trying to get something done is astounding. The shit you guys have to deal with. I mean, when you get done with high school and you start transition, did you go to art school after high school?
Yeah, I went to University of the Arts in Philadelphia,
Okay.
and they had an animation and film department there.
hmm Uh, what was it like your first day in animation school?
Um, Geez, first day, I don't know. I just remember, meeting my roommates and
Mhm.
that whole thing. I do feel like it wasn't like one of the big animation schools, and there wasn't really a focus on like getting into the animation industry.
Mhm.
So while I did learn a lot, and I don't regret any of it, like I didn't really learn anything about the business of animation and how animation gets done like at an industrial scale until I moved out to LA, and that was kind of a shock.
So you're originally from Philadelphia then?
No, I grew up in Colorado.
Okay.
I was born in Texas. I barely remember that, but yeah, Philadelphia was just college.
Yeah. What was it like going from, was it a huge culture shock? Because I've driven through Philadelphia a couple times, and it's an interesting place if nothing else. I mean, there's some interesting people there, as there is in other places too. But Philadelphia's got a, they got something, right? You just drive through, you're like, man, you feel different. Like lock the doors, roll those windows up real tight.
Yeah, I grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which at the time wasn't as big of a city as it is now. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted was the culture shock.
Yeah,
I don't think I realized how much of a culture shock I would eventually get. Like, it's kind of an angry place. I like it
yes, it is.
in its own way, but we did have this thing that we called Philly face, where you just had to like, if you're gonna exit a building, you just had to be like, and like put on this like angry, like pissed off face and just stare straight ahead and like walk kind of fast to wherever you were going.
It's that Vietnam stare. It's just that 1,000 mile stare. That's fantastic. What were some of your favorite places to eat out there in Philadelphia? You remember any?
Yeah, I mean the usual cheesesteak, kind
Yeah,
of Paul's Pizza too.
yeah,
That was my primary cheesesteak place, I guess.
that's fantastic, man. I like them cheesesteaks. So as you get, how long was art school, anyways? Is it like a traditional program, like 2, 3, 4 years, or
Yeah, this was a 4-year school.
what do you think was the biggest thing that you took away from art school?
Honestly, it was just sort of the broader education. Like I always like learning things, and I made it a point to take classes outside of my major. So it's a lot of the history and the poetry and just it's all stuff that I learned to love, and it's all stuff I incorporated into my work, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with animation.
It's funny because when I went to culinary school, I don't want to say I knew everything that I learned in culinary school, but from a young age at like 12, I mean, my generation especially, we have it, and even my son's generation, and now I've got another son in the month. His generation, it's just going to be further experienced at such a younger age because we have this thing called YouTube, or we have these things where we just share videos, or it's so easy to connect with people. I mean, back in the day, if I wanted to reach out to you, I would have to write you a letter, hope that it makes it, hope that you saw it and it just didn't get thrown away at the animation studio, and then just hope beyond hope that you would write back. And then that's how we would have some kind of correspondence. I mean, now it's like I said, I sent you a message on Instagram. You're like, oh shit, I usually don't check these things. And then here we are talking. It's a weird world, Maxwell.
Yeah, for sure.
But going back to my original point was when I was going through culinary school, I learned a shit ton by just watching Emerald live at the age of 12. Right, that was my rock star. That was the guy I looked up to. He just had this. It was like magic almost. He had this entire crowd captivated by just throwing his essence, or getting into it with the band and stuff like that, or making something and yelling bam and all this other crazy shit, right? So it was interesting. And then you start learning and watching all these other videos and seeing all these other people's techniques and how you do this. I mean, it's crazy. And then you get to culinary school and I'm like, man, I know this, I know this, I knew this. Like, why am I doing this? I'll
Did
tell
you
you
start
why.
bamming?
No, because I tried it one time, and then my chef was like, that's trademarked, right? And I'm like, oh shit.
It probably is.
Yeah. So I didn't want to go too deep, but being in there and just hanging out and shit, I'm like, man, it was a good time, a good experience. I met a lot of cool people. I wouldn't change it for the world because the military paid for it. I mean, when I got out, I could go to school and they pay me to go to school, so that was cool. But getting back to you, and when I was doing a little bit of research on you, it said you came up with the Billy and Mandy during a film, as far as your student film. Did I say that correctly? I don't know if
Right.
it was like a
Yeah.
senior film or okay. So it was a student film. Do you remember that initial, like, was this something that you had thought about previously, and it's just something you was kept changing or altering and evolving as it came up, or was it just one day it's like just came into your mind?
Those the characters of Billy and Mandy had been around for a long time.
Mhm.
I don't know exactly when Mandy came in as sort of a counterpart to Billy, but Billy was around since very early, like elementary school. I would just make these. My mom would give me those mini Bonbell cheeses with the wax on the outside,
Yeah.
and I would take the wax and I would sculpt these little dumb red people with a big nose, and I would call him Billy, and I would like throw him up to the ceiling in the school library, and they would just
Mhm.
stick there, and there were like 8 of them, like up. But I started making comic books about him and Mandy. Like they didn't really have the same personalities. Those kind of shifted over time. But by the time I got to college, it was just sort of an easy go-to. I was kind of big into at the time conspiracy theories, just as
Yeah.
dumb things. Uh, and other dumb things people believed in. So the film was actually about trepanation, which is drilling a hole into your skull to
Yeah.
release the demons. So yeah, that's I decided that's what I wanted to do. It had to be a really short film, so I was like, well, I'll just take these 2 kids and have them drill holes in each other's heads.
What was the reception, or what was your teacher saying when you showed him? Because I got to imagine, just being in that creative field, you see a lot of student films and stuff like that. Some of them are fantastic, some of them really really great, and then some of them are like, what the hell did I just watch? I mean, what kind of notes were you getting after the teacher saw this?
I
I know that's a long time ago, so I,
Yeah, it was. They seemed generally pleased. I always sort of overreach. So it was supposed to be like a 2-minute film, and I think it ended up being like 3.5 minutes or something like that. Uh, so, I went through a lot of my own trials and tribulations trying to figure out how to get it just done.
yeah.
So I think just the fact that I got it done and it was, kind of extra long, uh, it got me a good grade.
And that's all you need, man. A passing grade and a pat on the back. And it is amazing what a couple nice words can do, especially at such a young age where your mind's just starting to, I don't want to say develop, but it's for sure you're getting all these new experiences and stuff like that. And it's starting to shape, your person and your path and all this other stuff. So it's crazy what, a good grade and a few kind words can do to you to help,
Sure.
propel your profession. Um, when this was done, do you remember how long it took you to get the entire student film done?
It was like that was like the class project of the year. So you had other stuff you would do during the course of the year, but that was sort of the overarching thing was like come up with your film by week 2 or whatever and storyboard it out 2 weeks later, and then you got the rest of the, semester to get it done.
Did do you remember, and I always hate asking you guys to try to remember 20, 25, 30. I've had some people on here where I've tried to ask them to remember, and I don't ever ask you like specific episodes or lines of dialogue or something like that. So I try to keep it general so you guys aren't sitting there going like, oh shit, what am I supposed to say here? It's like I said, it's weird. It just bogs people down. But do you remember going into that, and then as far as the process, because you said it was on a 2 weeks you had to have the film, and then you had to start working it, and then any of your free time you were doing this. Do you remember how much of that original story you just evolved throughout that entire process of that year to make it?
uh, what do you mean? I guess just as far as did I cut anything out or?
No, not so much that you cut anything out. Did you have original, ending, or did you? How do you do? Whenever you have a topic, do you start at the ending and work yourself backwards, or do you just start and then as ideas come in, that's when you start playing with them? I guess is what I was getting at.
Uh, Back then, I would just do everything straight ahead,
Hmm.
and that's pretty much how most of Billy and Mandy went. I don't think I learned until probably the last season or two of Billy and Mandy that there were times that it helped to plan things out. Like especially if you're doing something longer than like an 11-minute cartoon, because I feel like a 7 or 11 minute cartoon, like if you screw it up, it's gone in 7 or 11 minutes. But if it's 22 minutes, like it's a little grueling if you don't have a plan B and things go wrong.
I can only imagine. I mean, so where did you start in the industry? What was your? Do you remember your first job and what you were doing at that point in time?
Yeah, I basically moved out here. I got an internship at Film Roman, which was the place that did The Simpsons.
Mhm.
So I worked on a show called The Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat.
Yeah.
It was the second season, and by that point, it had already been canceled. So it was just this weird, and I had no idea how weird any of this was until much later, but because I had no point of reference. But it was just this really strangely small skeleton crew of like 5 people, and basically I was just eager to do whatever. So I'd come in and be all excited, and I'd be like, "What can I do?" And they'd be like, "Do you want to do some character designs?" And I think they were just giving me stuff that nobody else wanted to do, but I was just so thrilled, and I would go and do it, and I'd come back, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're already done? Well, do you want to do some backgrounds?" Yeah, sure. And then I go do the backgrounds. So the internship went pretty well, and after that ended, I had an opportunity to get a real paying job there. So they gave me a choice to either go on to a new show called King of the Hill that they were doing. Uh, and at that point, like it was so early in the process that the designs all looked like Beavis and Butthead, where they were just like, 1.5 heads tall. Uh, these massive, massive heads. And then the other one was a Blues Brothers primetime show
Mhm.
that NBC was doing. And I was like, well, everybody knows what the Blues Brothers is. Like, that's going to be the one that's going to go. So I went on that. And that was another weird one where just like it was a huge crew, and it just like the pace was really really slow, and I kept getting stuff done, and eventually like my boss was like, look, just like slow down, just take a walk, or like like we're not going this fast, like you're gonna burn yourself out. And I was like, okay. But basically like the production would just keep shutting down and restarting, and we'd get these like long 2-week paid vacations while they retooled things, and that none of that's normal. Like knowing now, if I knew then what I know now, I'd be like, oh, this thing's imploding, which eventually it did. One day we just walked in and there was an announcement that was like, will the Blues Brothers crew please come to the main conference room? And we all went to the main conference room, like expecting bagels or something. And it was just like, guys in suits that were like, yeah, you're all done and you're leaving by 3.
That's insane when you think about it. It's like you just walk in, you're walking into your essentially you're walking into your own execution. You're like, I mean, we're terminating this contract. You go at that point, man. When something like that happens, obviously you're very new in the industry, and I'm assuming you have made some friends at that point in time, either from school or just doing your internship. When that happens, is it quick you guys all just go and jump on a different project, or is it 100% just everybody splits and goes their own way and it's feast or famine?
It's most of the time, crews don't really stay together. It's almost impossible to keep something like that rolling unless it's the same show.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's people know each other, and people try to hire their friends and people that they like working with. So like the guy, one of the guys on the Blues Brothers, ended up being one of my storyboard artists on, like, he was one of my bosses, and then years later he was one of my board artists on Billy and Mandy. So
What was his name?
you never know what's going to happen. Mike Diedrich.
Mike Diedrich. Hmm. That name sounds really, really familiar. I'm pretty sure when we were doing our little pre-interview type of thing, when I was talking about all the names coming by, you get 22 minutes of a cartoon and then you get like 7 seconds worth of credits, and I'm sitting there just trying to write shit down with a pen. I love how IMDb has it all set up because it'll say, "Oh, storyboard,
Right.
character design, background design." It makes it so much easier because, like I said, these credits just go, 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 go. Looking back on it now, obviously hindsight is always 2020. Um, would you have liked to go the route of King of the Hill, or knowing what you know now as far as how it ended for you, and you got to create your show, um, would you have still stayed the course and did the Blues Brothers still?
I mean, if I had chosen differently, there might not be a Billy and Mandy. So yeah, I'm cool with the way it went down.
Yeah. Um, what what did you gravitate more towards when you were doing your internship? Was it character design? Because I know you said as soon as you got finished, they would give you something else. Hey, you want to try this? Did you like backgrounds? What aspect of animation drew to you the most?
Um, I didn't get to do a lot of it during the internship, but storyboarding and storytelling has always been sort of my favorite part of it, the writing process. So that's
Why
kind of what I wanted to get into.
why do you think that speaks to you so much?
I mean, I've always just told visual stories. Like ever since I was a really little kid, I would do these little comic books. So it's just always sort of been a part of how I process the world, I guess.
Now, because you've brought up comic books a few times, and I'm pretty sure you can see them back there. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah, you got a nice collection.
yeah, I mean, oh, if I could show you the inside of this closet that's over here, it's like, I mean, sitting behind me, I've got some racks because I just have my long boxes out now, but I got a rack inside my closet here that's completely full of long boxes, and I got another one that I just started. My wife consistently says it's a sickness that I'm a pack rat, but however, I like walking into this place because it makes me feel like a kid again when I'm surrounded by all this shit that elicited this cool emotion back in the day. It puts me back in the mindset where I can sit here and just wax poetically about animation or movies or sports. Not all sports, just basketball, because that's the only one I'm really interested in. But nonetheless, man, when you started reading comics back in the day, what drew you more? Obviously, you say you really enjoyed the writing aspect. Was writing what really got you into comics, or was it art? And then as you got older, it kind of 50-50 to maybe went to writing. But what was the initial draw as far as comics go?
Just as far as like comics that I read as a kid, or
Yeah. Like what was that initial, like, because you said you would read comics and you wanted to do comics and all this other stuff, but what was it about comics? Was it the art of the story that kind of drew you into that world?
I think it was the combination of both. Like I love to draw, and it was I guess just amazing to me that people sort of realize these fantasy worlds and these characters just by drawing them. So a lot of it came out of just tracing other people's stuff, and like even like newspaper comics like Garfield and stuff. Like as a really little kid, I was into those, and I would just make my own versions of those, like off-brand. There was like an off-brand Garfield named after my uncle's dog, that kind of thing.
uh what out of the big two, I mean, were indie books a real big thing when you started reading, or was it just Marvel, DC that you kind of gravitated to?
Yeah, when I was a kid, it was just Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
Really, like Image and stuff didn't come around until I was in college.
Mhm. What titles from Marvel and DC would you really enjoy reading?
I also didn't have a consistent subscription or anything, so once a year, my parents for Christmas would get me this 100 pack of comics from like the Sears catalog, and it would just have a random mixture of Marvel and DC. So like I kind of learned who everybody was, but like I never got like the full story, which was kind of cool in a way because I had to sort of like make up my own version of what might happen next. But yeah, it'd be like, I'd get like one Alpha Flight where I'd be like, whoa, there's a Yeti and Spider-Man's in this. And then like the next year I'd be like, I guess Spider-Man's not in it. I don't know.
It's always crazy because especially like today, um, boredom is completely taken out of kids' hands because with streaming, with phones in our pockets, with iPads, all this other crazy shit that we have, we're not bored as much as we used to be. I know me, I'm only 30, I'll be 32 in August. And I know if I ever told my mom I was bored, she would either tell me to go outside and do something, or I would just get a book full of chores and shit to do. So you always knew, don't say I'm bored. But the good thing about being bored is because it forces that noodle up there to come up with something to keep you entertained. And I don't want to say that's going to be lacking in today's day and age, because there's always going to be creative people.
Yeah,
There's
but
always
man, we were talking a little bit earlier about 2020, and let me tell you, like, just my brain was so full of just mess in 2020 that I was like, I want to be bored.
yeah.
And so I've kind of been into like gardening and succulents and stuff for the last couple of years, but like I went in hard on that last year, and it's just like go outside and just like plant some things and quiet down and get
Well,
bored.
well,
That's what it's all about.
sometimes you got to have that what's it called, you got to have that balance, right? You got to have that work, you got to have that play, but you also got to have that relax. That R&R is very, very essential because it shuts your brain down. It makes you come back to normal or come back to level, essentially. Because if we're just consistently, and you can talk about it like story writing too, if you're consistently writing, not so much at a pace as far as getting stuff down, but if your story is consistently just pulling at the heartstrings nonstop for 22 minutes, right? Every episode, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 seasons, it's going to be not only hard to keep that pace, but it's going to be hard to have somebody emotionally attached, because if you're always like, oh shit, this dude's gonna die this episode, this dude's gonna die this episode, eventually like, oh man, he's made it, 57 episodes, he's not gonna die, obviously. But gardening is so fantastic because you get out in the sun, right? You get to plant something, put it in the ground, and you watch something grow. Very rarely do we get to see something from the start to the finish like that. And I do the same.
Or I kill it and I get to the finish much quicker.
Well, as long as you don't overwater or underwater, or just leave something that is only supposed to have an hour of sun and you leave it out there all day. Like Florida is notorious, right? We got weird planting seasons. We either do late fall, early spring, because it's just so damn hot here. And these squirrels, I've had so many acorns just buried into my planters out here. My dogs rip them out of the ground. So now I had to do above ground planters and all this other stuff. Gardening is a fantastic way to really just slow down the pace. But as we were talking just a little bit ago, man, when you get that call or you get walked into that office, right? Do you essentially, where do you go after Blues Brothers?
The streets. It's been pretty much every time I've I guess left a job, it takes about 6 months to find another one for whatever reason. So yeah, I just sort of went back, retooled my portfolio. You don't really have portfolios, like physical portfolios like that anymore. Yeah, we were talking about like things, the miracle of modern communication earlier, and like, yeah, it's so nice not to have to like lug around 20 pounds of paper and just like have, and people had like original portfolios back then. Like you'd have your originals, which were the good ones, and like you'd give that to the studio you really wanted to go to, and then you'd have copies that you'd send around. And yeah, I remember like one of my original portfolios ended up at Nickelodeon, and they just lost it. And like years later, like literally 2 or 3 years later, they were like, "Hey, come down. We found a portfolio." And I was like, "Really? You found my portfolio from years ago?" And they were like, "Yeah, we guess." And then by the time I got down there, it was gone again.
Is it normal for you guys to get your portfolios back, or is it something that they just get rid of?
But yeah, back then you would like give it to, they'd have somebody kind of in charge of portfolios, so they would log it in and show it around to different productions, and once everybody'd seen it, whether they got a job or not, the portfolio would go back to the owner.
That's cool, man. Because I assumed it's something that you just had to write off at the end of the year for taxes. Like, yeah, man, I gave my portfolio. I had to go build another one and all this other crazy shit. So it's interesting, and it's nice to know that you get your work back that you really tooled over and just
right.
And then your resume and shit like that. You put your heart and soul into it. So what was the next job after that? I mean, I think, did you start working on Cow and Chicken right after that?
Yeah, that was it. I think I did a couple of storyboards for a show called Puccini's Yard that was coming out of Canada, and I did it all over fax machine.
Oh,
so I would do the storyboard, and then I would like fax it, and 3 hours later I would get a receipt that had come out all fuzzy, and I would do it again. But yeah, the next I guess boots on the ground job was Cow and Chicken for Hanna-Barbera.
it's fantastic. I've actually talked to David Feiss and Fred Seibert as well. I've been waiting to get a couple more creators on here because I wanted to do an entire like 6-8 weeks of just releasing episodes with you and David Feiss. I've been trying real hard for Danny. I'm pretty sure he has nothing to do. He wants nothing to do with it, which is perfectly fine. I know he gets asked all the time, but now I've got a few of you creators, so I'm going to release those episodes concurrently. So it's just building up that, in my opinion, what you guys did in the area you guys really worked in, for me, was just a cartoon renaissance. I mean, I usually, whenever I have a Cartoon Network guy on, or girl, excuse me, I like this one because it's got the entire first run of the Hanna-Barbera and what a cartoon shorts, all those, from the Ed Boys to Powerpuff Girls. Billy and Mandy's on there with Grimm, of course Cow and Chicken with David Feiss, and then Courage and all these other crazy things. So I always like wearing that, especially when you guys come on, because that time, like I said, was a cartoon renaissance. That time was a boom. That time, just for me specifically, and so many other fans like myself, was huge with the cartoons that you guys were creating. I mean, I don't think we'll ever see something like that again. I mean, I hope we do. But you guys set a standard in the industry that is very hard. You guys set a bar really, really high. And I don't think anybody's come close, at least to that caliber and that level and that amount of cartoons that came out that were just spectacular. There were some stinkers in the shorts and stuff like that. I enjoyed almost every single one that I've seen. But when you're working cow and excuse me, when you're working cow and chicken, and is that when you start working, at nighttime or on the weekends on Billy and Mandy, or how does Billy and Mandy start coming into the fold as far as shooting it and trying to get it made for Cartoon Network?
Since the moment I moved to Los Angeles, I was
Yeah.
pitching things like before I even had well, probably not before the internship, but like during that internship, I was, trying to pitch shows. And I had a superhero show and some other space show. And it wasn't until like mid first season of Cow and Chicken that one of the production people at Hanna-Barbera was just walking around and they were like, "Hey, do you have anything you want to pitch? Because we're doing a new batch of, these cartoon shorts." And I was like, "Yeah." So yeah, I had a couple things I'd been working on, and so I showed him the superhero cartoon, which was called Milkman, and he was like basically just a carton of milk, and on the back, this doesn't make any sense in modern context, but like in the old days, they used to put like pictures of missing kids on the back of milk cartons. So like basically, he would just like find missing kids by like looking at the back of his head with a mirror. And seeing the who was missing and then going and finding them, and obviously like that was never going to happen. Like nobody's ever going to make that into a cartoon.
Never
But
say never.
yeah, but in there as secondary characters were Billy and Mandy. So some executive at Cartoon Network was like, "Hey, I like the look of these two, like what else, what's their deal?" And I was like, "Well, if I actually did make a Billy and Mandy show, like I feel like it's missing like a key ingredient."
Mm-hmm.
So I started thinking about the other ideas I had, and one of them was this potential show about a little girl and the devil, or a little girl and the Grim Reaper, because I knew from experience working on Cow and Chicken that Cartoon Network was not into the devil. So I was like, well, hey, if they're not into the devil, they'll certainly be into the personification of death. So I'll try that. But yeah, I put it all in an envelope and gave it to one of the production people, and it disappeared for about 6 months, and then I just got a response that was like, "Hey, we want to make a short." It was a bizarre experience.
What goes into? So you say it disappears for 6 months. Is it on the back burner in your mind, or is it like, oh shit, they're probably not going to take it, so you're just putting your head down and doing what you need to do?
I think at that point I was probably just doing my work, and I'd probably mentally moved on to other things I was thinking about pitching. But
yeah. Did you feel when that initial executive came up and said, "Hey man, no on the Milkman, but maybe Billy and Mandy," and you send it off? Do you start thinking like, maybe I need to retool this, or maybe I need to rethink this? Or is that just, like I said, once you put something out there and you give it to somebody, you still physically trying to work on that property, or is your brain going like, "Hey man, try something else, try something new"?
I mean, as far as pitching that goes in that moment, I guess, like I sent them a show Bible, which was like 10 pages of just drawings and story ideas, whatever dumb jokes I thought would fit. And that was like my best effort at selling that idea. So I probably wouldn't do anything else with it until they rejected it. And then I might be like, well, if I'm going to take this to say Nickelodeon or wherever else, like what would I have to do to this to make it work there?
I got you.
And I did pitch Billy and Mandy to one other place, which was Nickelodeon, and they were like, "Yeah, we really like it, but like no one will ever buy this because it's got the Grim Reaper in it." And I was like, "Yeah, I was kind of worried about that."
It's funny, you think about it, and you said Cartoon Network wasn't into the devil, right?
Right.
Yet this guy's bouncing on his ass cheeks every week. I mean,
True.
Cow and Chicken.
I think they. Yeah, I just think it was more than they bargained for. Like I think they got a bunch of letters from angry religious people as well as people that didn't like butts. So it was like it's two strikes right there.
What you're saying is cow and chicken was far ahead of your time, because now all anybody gives a shit about is having the fattest, juiciest ass. Everybody's out here
That's
on
so true. That's
Instagram
so true.
doing squats. So now if David Feist pitches this, we can get a cow and chicken reboot, and fucking greased up red guy, he's gonna have the fattest ass, right? So
Oh yeah, he was
um,
twerking 10 years before it was cool.
that's phenomenal. Who do you think would win, man? Are we, if, because we saw Grimm doing a dance off. I believe he was doing, what was it, breakdancing in one of the episodes? My mind's super, super foggy. I usually smoke a joint before I talk to everybody, but we were putting some stuff together because that one helps me calm down. It helps me think about shit. Most people, it just puts them on a different planet, and then there's like, I can't think, I can't concentrate. For me, it starts bringing up all these, it starts opening up doors, essentially, is what I'm getting at, Maxwell, where I can go down this road or this road. I start seeing things that shouldn't be there, are there, or parallels and stuff. But I want to think that I'm pretty sure, did Grimm have a breakdance or a dance off with somebody in this series? Do you remember?
He's definitely had a couple of. I don't know if he ever had like an official dance off with like awards or like high stakes or anything, but he might have.
If not,
I can remember Billy, Mandy, and Grimm dancing in front of a cauldron and the shmoo coming out of it, and definitely a little bit of dancing during the old school hip hop episode. But yeah, I don't know. I'm blanking.
who do you think? The only reason I bring that up is, who do you think's winning? Do you think Grimm is just too flat in the back to win a twerking contest, or do you think his Rastafarian roots would really pull through and he would just connect with that beat and drum? Or do you think the red guy's taking it?
That's a tough one. Does he have no ass or does he have a magical ass? I don't know.
Oh,
I will say in probably any competition, the cow and chicken devil would eat him alive.
nonetheless, have you ever been asked a question like that before? I'm trying to break new
No,
ground.
that's a new one. That's a new one. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Um, so when I was talking to Rob Renzetti, right, he told me it's one thing to work on somebody else's show, but it's something else once you have your show greenlit. The pressure obviously goes up. The stress is tremendous. You're, trying to worry about every single detail, making sure it's perfect, because you never know when, you never know when they're going to say, hey man, this was your last story, or hey man, you can't do that. So you want to get your message out there. You want to get whatever's in your heart or whatever's on your head, from your head to your paper, and your paper to the screen. Um, and he was talking just about all the extenuating circumstances and the stress and the pressure. Did that equate to you? Did you see something completely different like Rob was talking about? Or were you just, I don't want to say you were chill, relaxed, and all this other stuff, but what was it like once you started running the show?
I mean, there was definitely pressure. I think I tend to put a lot more pressure on myself than other people put on me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, there was pressure, but there was also sort of a certain thrill to it at the time. Like, it would get my heart pumping, and I'd be like, "This is exciting." And I don't think I really understood that that wasn't necessarily like physically good for me until like
Yeah.
somewhere 3 or 4 years into it, when I was like, doing all the same things that I did when I started out by just like pounding coffee constantly and not really sleeping, and like 4 years into it I was like, I feel like shit, and I was like, oh, I should probably
Take a break.
actually like take care of myself a little bit. But yeah, you learn.
What you've got such an interesting way of looking at things, and I really enjoy that, man. I This is one of my favorite parts of the day. Not only get to talk to you, but just getting to talk with people that is not in my circle on a consistent basis. Not my best friends, not my work, companions, not my wife and son, or I'll talk to my dogs all the time. Especially when I can't sleep, I go and get the dog I showed you before we started this. I'll go and get her, and we'll just hang out and shit like that, watch cartoons, and it's fun to have somebody to bounce stuff off with. What was the, you know, when you said you were going through all of this, 4 years just running hard. Um, what were some of the things that you liked about that? Excuse me, sorry. And what were some of the things you didn't like? That obviously you said you're like, man, I got to learn to take care of myself a little bit better. But what were some of those things that you probably learned if you wouldn't have been, in that position as that creator, that showrunner? Um, that you might have not learned, just storyboarding somewhere?
I mean, it is an entirely different job.
Mhm.
Like storytelling is I always say that, the drawing and the storytelling that's why I'm there. That's what I love. And the management thing, that's an equal, half, if not just a third, but it's a big chunk of the job, and that's something that I kind of had to train myself to like. And still sometimes I don't like it, but yeah, it's it's still storytelling. You still got the story you want to tell, but now you actually have the agency to be able to fight for it.
Mhm.
Whereas most of the time, like, you do a storyboard, you turn it in, someone's like, do this, do this, do this, and you're like,
Yeah.
all right, and you do those things, and you're done. But thankfully on Billy and Mandy, I would tell a story and I would show it to the network, and they'd be like, well, do this, do this, do this, and I'd be like, what if I did this instead? And yeah, so that's just you sort of forge relationships with the executives, and I got lucky that I had a really good executive and we had a really good relationship. So it really did come down to just like talking things out. There was never really any ultimatums or anything. No one was ever like, well, yeah, there were times when they were like, yeah, absolutely do not do this, but but most of the time, like, we could have a real discussion about it before it got there.
Who was the executive that was in charge for the show?
His name's Jay Bastion, and he's one of the big wigs at Warner Brothers TV Animation right now.
Okay,
I don't.
I always like giving a shout out whenever somebody's got a pleasant experience with somebody. I always like giving them a shout out. Makes thank you for
Yeah,
making
he's
Maxwell show come through.
yeah, he came out from I guess pretty much all the Cartoon Network executives came out from Atlanta when toward the final days of Cartoon Network. But yeah,
Yeah, all of them worked at what was it, Warner Media, not Warner Media, excuse me. Oh, shit, why am I blanking on Ted Turner's name right now? Turner Media.
yeah.
During that whole merger.
Hmm.
When this is going on, you obviously, as you're a storyboard artist, before you get to creating your show, like you just said, you put up your storyboards. They'll say, hey, change this, change this, change this. What were some of the things? And obviously, you're probably not going to remember, but what were some of the things that you would notice and you would send back? Would it be character to background character, poses and stuff like that? But what were some of the things you would look for to say, hey man, this really isn't what we're looking for right now, go this direction? Or how would you manage that situation?
Just like that, I guess. Just
Yeah.
talking to people about it. Yeah, that's really all you can do.
Was it difficult, assuming or coming into that role? Was it a huge learning curve, or was it something that you
Yeah. I mean, I've always been, I don't want to say antisocial or not necessarily shy, but I guess 2 years ago now, I found out that I have Asperger's. So like, I've always just had a problem with social situations. Just I get really nervous. So yeah, just talking to somebody and giving somebody notes is a grueling and terrible experience for me because I don't like not that you're tearing people down by giving them notes, but it's just like, I don't know, my body and my brain, some part of my brain think it's a confrontational situation, so it's a hard thing for me to do. So yeah, getting through that part to the point where I could like functionally run a show is one of the things I think I'm most proud of.
well, I mean, you did a fantastic job, and knowing you have Asperger's is insane. There's two people now that I've talked to that like. Whenever I do research on you guys, I go and look up, Wikipedia. If you guys got a blog or if you guys got something that you're writing, I try to watch every video you guys have done, so I don't ask you the same stuff that you've always been asked. Obviously, there's always some overlap because you created Billy and Mandy. So I'm going to have to ask you like how that came into your head. And I try to phrase it or try to bring up different things or different avenues where it doesn't sound like it's just, another piece of white bread type of thing, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Try to keep it fun and engaging.
Absolutely.
Um, but when I was talking, and I hate name dropping because it makes me sound like a douche, but when I was talking to Billy West, I had no idea that this man had autism. He was on the spectrum. And to know that he had to go through that, and this is before they really knew what autism or that it was, something that was a barrier for a lot of people. It's a barrier. Same thing with Asperger's. I know a couple people, and just going outside of their house is something that is crippling to them. Being put in a situation where they're around people that they do not know or they don't trust, or it's just seeing the things that people have to overcome and the adversities that they're laid out in front of all of us. And then some adversities for some people are a lot greater than other people. It's just the luck of the dice, the luck of the draw, whatever you want to call it. Hats off to you, man. I mean, there's so many people that would just crumble, right? And not just, with what they have, and I don't mean to be disparaging or anything like that. There's so many people that would just be consumed. I mean, you saw it during last year, during the lockdown. There's so many people out there. Like, I just walked by a few people. I don't know why my voice keeps cracking, man. I mean, feels like I'm back in.
You're getting emotional.
Yeah, I'm getting really emotional. I'm gonna cry on this thing real quick. It's interesting to see like what fears people have, or what, like I said, issues or adversities they have. I mean, I just walked by somebody in the store just a little while ago. They had 3 masks on. They had gloves, like the you ever seen, it's going to be graphic, but you ever seen somebody try to check to see if a cow's pregnant? The gloves.
Oh yeah, I had to do that in
really
high school. Long story.
No, we got time for that story. So please tell me about the time that you had to stick your hand in a cow, Maxwell.
It was 6th grade. It was called High Trails, and they sent you off into the woods to camp for a couple of days and learn about nature and touch a cow uterus and eat some ants and collect swamp water, that kind of stuff.
Man, I've never had ants before. I've had crickets. They're not too bad. I've had grass.
Ants are a little bit lemony.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's going to sound like I'm mean. Did you smash them up before you ate them, or did you just throw them down raw?
I think I smashed them.
Yeah? I just
there weren't many. I was not into the idea at the time.
Well, if you ever get the chance to try crickets, and I've had them at a few different Mexican restaurants and shit, and they toss them in like chili lime salt. They taste like a potato chip because they fry them real hard and stuff, so they're real crispy. So it's got the consistency and the texture of a potato chip, and the chili lime salt's delicious on almost everything.
I've been meaning to try them. They say we're all going to be eating them in 30 years, so got to get a head start.
I hope that's not the case, because I really love fried chicken, Maxwell. That's my favorite thing to eat in the world, and I don't know if I could have Kentucky Fried Cricket is what I'm getting at. I don't know if that makes.
It doesn't seem like it would be the same.
No, it probably wouldn't, man. It probably hurt my feelings a lot. Well, where were we going before we were talking about shoving our hands?
Hey, I don't know. That kind of derails everything a little bit, doesn't it?
No, 100%. No, I know where we were at. I'm sorry. We were talking about just the adversities that people had to overcome and all that other stuff. So essentially, what I'm getting at, man, is hats off to you, man, because you took it. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like you saw something or you found out something and you still push through it. Like I said, there's so many people that would just fold or cripple or like, it's just too much for me, right? But you made it through, man, and you made one of the greatest cartoons of all time. And speaking on that, with this cartoon, obviously I asked you this question before we started, and I didn't know anything about this person until I got a tweet from somebody, Stuart Snyder, right?
Mm-hmm.
This name got brought up, and we don't have to go deep. Like I told you before, we don't have. Oh shit! Maxwell's taking off his jacket.
Taking off the jacket.
He means business now, ladies and gentlemen. But we don't have to go super in depth on any of this stuff. It could be just a glancing type of thing. But I did some research on this, and it was very superficial research, because when I was reading an article, this guy really pissed me off with just how his mind worked. But I don't really look at it as a negative light, because everybody's just trying to do what they think is best. You can only do what you think is right. And if you think it's right, man, who am I to say, hey man, you did this wrong, right? Does that make any sense or no?
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay, cool. But with this, what was it like, having this discussion where the show gets canceled, or you finish up, you wrap up what you're doing? I got to imagine that this thing was a ratings hit, right? Billy and Mandy was huge, at least for me.
Yeah, we were consistently in the top 3, and somewhere there toward the end, we were doing really well in the Fredberger Yes era.
Yeah,
I think that was our last season.
What was that conversation like? And if you don't want to talk about it, it's completely cool, because we can just skate over it and go to something else. What was that talk like? I mean, did they call you in? Was it the same thing as the Blues Brothers, where they're like, "Hey, man, everybody's in suits. You need to wrap up your story," or how did that go? And if that's too personal, I apologize. Like I said, we can.
No, it's all right. No, they did me dirty. Yeah, I had Billy and Mandy that was wrapping up, so I'm always going to be thankful for that we did get to sort of finish out the series. At that time, 52 episodes was kind of all you got, and we made it to 76. So, hooray! So yeah, I was happy about that, and then I was excited about the future too, though, because I had Underfist that we just finished, and they were talking about possibly spinning that off into a series, and then I had another thing in development there as well. And sort of the sad part is I let other opportunities elsewhere go because I was so happy at Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
And then one random day in the not too distant future from then, everybody got called into the main conference room, and some people from Atlanta that nobody had ever seen before came out and explained why Billy and Mandy was problematic for the network and just sort of the poster child of bad show and what they didn't want. And it was just sort of this really ugly dressing down of me and of Billy and Mandy. I felt in front of the whole studio, and I was so like angry and upset after that. And I just remember going out into the hall where the executives that I was used to, they were all out there, and they were like, "Whoa, hey, yeah, I don't know what that was." And so yeah, I was pretty pissed for a while, and eventually, they let Craig McCracken go, they let Gendy go, and I was like, well, they're certainly not keeping me at this point, and it's clearly not personal at this point because they're just laying waste to everything, and that's kind of what they did. That's I guess that was like 2008 or 9. That's when they decided that they weren't competing enough with Disney and Nickelodeon's live action, and that they needed more live action and less animation. So it was just sort of an unfortunate series of events. Just the timing, and honestly, as I've gone through my career, like this stuff does happen all the time, and the real like great part of it was that we had 7 years essentially on Billy and Mandy that we didn't have a regime change, or we did have 2 regime changes, but they were okay. Yeah. But it's just like at any moment someone can decide that they want to do something else, and there's not really much you can do about it.
It just goes to show you the mismanagement is insane in just almost every industry, because you've got somebody that thinks, like I said, if this guy a bad guy, I don't know him any more than I know somebody else that I've never met before, right? However, just me being completely taken any kind of biases that I have on this show, because like I said, I love the work you did, man. This was so fun as a kid to sit there, and I always wanted some weird ass friend, right? Like Grim. I didn't want the Grim Reaper following me around because I didn't want to shit my pants on a consistent basis because that guy's around, somebody's dying. I don't want my friends to die, right? But I always wanted like some crazy cool friend that was from like a different world or a different planet. And I got to live vicariously through these 2 characters, right?
Yeah, that was actually sort of my way that I would sort of resell the show anytime I would get guff from executives. I'd be like, well, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's just wild that this happened, and even if this thing made half the ratings that it was making, and you said it was top 3 among everything else, and then you find out that they let Gendy go and they let Craig go. I mean, Gendy's made it back. He's doing Primal now. He got to wrap up Samurai Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal, beautiful shows. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I can talk about that one. Like, that dude is a master of silence. I've never seen a show that is so quiet but packs a punch when it comes to emotion. And both Primal and with Samurai Jack. I mean,
Right.
beautifully done. And to let them, just to figure out that, or find out that those two guys let go, and then yourself got let go, you're just like, shit, man, are you just chopping up my entire childhood? And like I was getting on to just a second ago, even if you guys did half the ratings of what you did back then, in today's market, those same guys that said, hey, you guys have to go home, I don't think they'd be batting an eyelash at
Oh yeah,
half you
sure.
guys' ratings. I mean, it's, and like I said, this is just me having a perspective on the outside, playing the devil's advocate, if you will, or the red guy's advocate, if you will. It's insane to sit here and think about something that is just topping charts, topping ratings. That's all kids are talking about. That's all kids are watching. I mean, I got to imagine that just the ad revenue that would come in on that show alone, or just Cartoon Network during that era alone, would be, oh shit, we're filling our pockets. Let's just keep it going. If it's not broke, don't fix it. It's just wild to think that, you know, some people that had no business really running a business of animation, trying to turn Cartoon Network, the first word being
Yeah, I
cartoon.
think that's really what it is. Like, you
Yeah.
can get as mad as you want at those people, but like they were, in charge of not only Cartoon Network but ESPN and like 6 other networks, and I guarantee you they didn't give a shit about the cartoons.
No.
They, they may have looked at Cartoon Network and saw that it was like a 7th tier Turner property, and like, well, burn it down, start over. But I don't think anybody put any deep thought into what like the plan was at that point.
Probably not. But even if they didn't, you would think if it was just numbers that they were looking at, not just ratings, but numbers, the ad revenue alone that was coming in during these blocks of these outstanding shows. Like I said, we just, with your name, with Gendy, with Craig, with John for for Courage, excuse me, Danny Antonucci with Ed, Ed, and Eddie. I mean, I feel like I'm missing one. David Feiss with Cow and Chicken. And then you got Codename Kids Next Door as well, came in on that run.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of you guys are just like, thank you, see you guys later. It's just wild, man. But I think we've talked enough about that depressing shit. And if I could say anything about that,
we'll move on to other depressing shit.
No, a lot of the stuff. What starts to come next is fan questions, and like I've said, there's like 4 or 5 pages here that I've got written down of fans' questions, and it's one of the most well-received posts that I've ever done when it comes to having anybody on. I think your top 3. I don't want to keep saying that number like you did, but your top 3 for sure. I don't know where my other books are as far as people wanting to ask you stuff.
Well, that may be true, but the answers are still depressing.
But I got to imagine, just from a fan perspective, man, thank you for that. Those guys didn't see what creators like you and everybody else that you named and I named saw, right? We saw magic, and that's what you guys did. You guys thought of something up here. It traveled down your arm and onto a piece of paper. Well, I mean, for the most part, now it's digital. It travels to your iPad. Sure. But you guys came up with something that will inspire and continue to inspire generations for here on in. There is no stopping any of these cartoons that you guys worked on. So what I'm getting at is fuck those guys, man. You guys were on point. You guys made us.
Thank you.
No problem, man. Thank you for what you did. But you guys made us enjoy being kids with the stories and the art you guys were putting out. If it wasn't for you guys, man, I'd probably be into Coldplay. I'd probably.
Oh, that's you reminded me. I was trying to think of something earlier. I was mid sentence and I sort of lost my train of thought. But yeah, like that was the whole thing with like Billy and Mandy. Is like they were supposed to be like, the kids you would want to hang out with for 22 minutes and not be role models. Like that was always my thing. Is like they're not role models, and I think that was another thing that kind of happened. Around 2008, 2010 was like that's. The Disney influence sort of leaked out, and every character, whether they were good or the good guy or the bad guy or whoever, had to sort of have role model qualities. So that also made it difficult.
It's weird to think that in today's day and age, we have to have black and white characters. What I mean by that is not race, but you have the Boy Scout. Let's just take comic books right now, right? Superman, right? He's the guy, he's the beacon of light that everybody looks towards. When it's the darkest hour, that's the person that you want. But it doesn't make sense, right? Because one bad day, and we saw it in Justice League, Zack Snyder's cut. We saw it in The Boys. We've seen it in Invincible. One bad day can turn that Boy Scout into something that nobody saw coming, right? And that's where you get the real character. When you get a Superman that doesn't look as people as anything more than commodity or ants, right? That's just they're ever changing. They can shoot out another one in 9 months. These people don't matter. I don't like those type of characters. I like the characters that we were just talking about, the ones that are fun, the ones that have and play in that gray area. They take a little bit from here and they take a little bit from here and they put it on that color, that palette, and then they make their own color, right? So that's what I loved about Billy and Mandy so much, is these guys were like, they're not talking down to us. They're not making us feel dumb or feel weird to be a kid, man, because being a kid is already weird enough, right? Growing up, you got all these hormones going. Being an adult is just as weird, but especially for a kid when you have no outside experience, it's weird. Everybody goes through it, right? And this is one of those shows, as well as those other creators that we talked about, that really spoke to a lot of us kids. So we know what you were doing, and we appreciate what you were doing. Those guys just didn't know what they had, and they had gold in their hand, and then they just let it turn to fool's gold, essentially, by letting you guys go. But nonetheless, man, that's neither here nor there. I'm glad you made the show you made. I'm glad you got to tell your story. I hope. Do you have the rights, or does Cartoon?
Oh no, that's all Cartoon Network.
Is there a specific time if they don't do something with it, like with movies, like if they don't do
I'm pretty sure it's forever. Like that last Powerpuff Girls reboot, like I don't even know. I know Craig wasn't really involved. I heard that nobody even told him about it at first, so
which is
that may or may not be true. I don't know, but
I mean,
it wouldn't surprise me.
No, it really wouldn't, with the way people just cut. It's insane when you really think about like just the shisty stuff or the dirty stuff that happens in all walks of life, but especially animation. And that's, like I said, it's not me trying to shit on animation or anything like that, but it's just
you should be. It is like, it has all the problems that the rest of the entertainment industry has, but it also just has like the who gives a shit factor.
Yeah.
Of it's not something adults care about for the most part. I think that's been changing over the last decade or two, but it doesn't have a lot of advocates, so you got to deal with all the usual Hollywood nonsense of like deadlines and sex creeps. Yeah. But also there's like just it's art. It is a different sort of thing than a lot of what's on TV, and I think a lot of people just don't appreciate how long it takes to make and just how much goes into even the simplest dumb little 7-minute cartoon.
Well, that's why I do this podcast, because I don't want you guys to go, and it sounds very egotistical of me to say something like that, but when I told you I would watch shows and I would see the credits, and why don't I know this guy's name or this girl's name? Why don't I know them? Yet I know what they work on, right? That's why I do this. I want to be an advocate, not only just for animation, but anybody else I find interesting. That I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into saying, hey, this is only an animation podcast. That's why it came up with What's in My Head podcast. My wife and I was trying to think of a name, and I didn't want to go the animation route, even though I knew that I loved cartoons so much, because I wanted to keep it broad. I want to keep it open. Mm-hmm. Something that if you don't like cartoons this week, you would talk music next week, or talk to a doctor next week, or some crazy shit. And we're driving around, and I'm pretty sure you remember the band, the Cranberries, and then that zombie song came on. Right. And then the chorus is going, "What's in your head?" or "What's in my head?" or some shit like that. "What's in your head" is what it was saying. And then my wife's driving, and then she slaps me in the arm. She's like, "That's the name of your podcast right there." And I was like, "Zombies?" And she's like, "No, listen to the chorus." And it starts going in it. And she's like, "You've always got some weird shit going on in your head. You go off on these tangents and all this other stuff. Use that name." And I'm like, I like that, because it doesn't say I'm just going to talk about X, Y, or Z, right? So, and like I said, that's why I want to be that advocate for you guys, because like I said, you should have gotten treated a hell of a lot better than what you are. You made so many kids' lives worth something, worth a damn. I'm pretty sure you hear it all the time. Like, I would have done this, that, or the other if it wasn't for your show. Your show made it cool to come home and just veg out after a long, hard day, man. You were a spotlight. You were that role model that you didn't want those characters to be, or you knew those characters weren't being. You gave so many people something great to look at, man. And thank you for that, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, maybe I don't take compliments well.
That's perfectly fine, man. Just as long as, hey, he's hanging on. He was sleeping.
Yeah. Sorry, Katie.
So,
Well, no, he's still there, I guess.
oh, he'll hang on for dear life.
Yeah, it's sort of uncomfortable. Let's see what I can do.
He's for sure gonna claw the shit out of you.
This is this isn't a video podcast, is it? So
it is, but I can pause it real quick. All right. Man, they'd added some stuff. Can you hear that when they said recording?
Yeah, that is new.
Yeah, that's weird, man. Interesting. Well,
I guess somebody must have gotten recorded when they didn't know they were getting recorded.
There were so many people caught with their pants down, pun intended, last year with Zoom. So it's weird now. But this is my second favorite part of the podcast, and that's getting to ask all the fans questions. My first part is having you guys get to come on, and I get to have you, for a little bit of time before I get to let everybody else have you, right? So when I told you earlier, you got a lot of questions here. We'll get to as many as we can, because I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But the first one is from Sun10. What was your least favorite aspect of the show that you were able to change, other than thick outlines? I guess somebody said that you just didn't like thick outlines on your characters.
Yeah, it was, there's stuff that I did in the pilot that I wouldn't have continued to do if they hadn't aired the pilot. I don't know. I didn't really know what I was doing, obviously, and because I was 23 years old, so I just was like, I was really kind of into the UPA style, as was everybody, but it wasn't really natural for me to do. So I just kept kind of drawing in my own rubbery way, but I put like this thick outline around it, which looked fine, on paper, but in motion, I ended up not liking it. And over the seasons, you can kind of see it get whittled away. But the question was not about that.
Oh, that's perfectly fine, man. I love you bringing up UPA. UPA is one of my favorite production companies. I absolutely, their color palette is phenomenal. I love, especially in the Mr. McGee, their backgrounds were so beautiful. I love it when people bring up UPA, and I'm so glad. I can't remember. Just butchered that one. I can't believe I didn't ask you what some of your biggest influences were.
Oh, you did. We talked about it. I went to Warner Brothers, and I probably would have come around to UPA eventually.
Oh, okay.
If we kept talking about it, but it's in there.
It's a fantastic company. Andre D12 wants to know, how was it working with Tom Warburton on the Kids Next Door and Grimm crossover?
It was nice. It was great. I was basically wrapping up Billy and Mandy's Big Boogie Adventure and our last couple of episodes of the series, and it was all kind of overlapping because that's the only way you could get like the privilege of doing a long form thing was to kind of do it on top of the thing you were already doing, and thereby save enough money to make it worthwhile. So I was just like burnt out, and Warburton comes up and he's like, "Hey, you want to do a crossover?" And I was like, he was like, "Come on, like you won't have to do much, and we'll have this person storyboarded." And he kind of just talked me into it. So we got together over the phone for the most part and talked about the script. And he would come out. Cartoon Network would fly him out, I think once a quarter or twice a year, something like that, for like his inaugural record. So during that time we kind of worked it all out, and it was sort of my first remote production, I guess, in a way. And once it was all done and the picture came back, Cartoon Network flew me out to New York, and we did the post-production together out there. It was nice. I don't usually have like production buddy, so a lot of the time I'm sort of the writer, producer, director, but which is fun in its own right. But it's also nice to have someone else to bounce things off of.
Was that something that just you guys spitballed and then it just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger as far as like coming up with a story, or did he have an initial idea to do a crossover? Because he came to you and said, "Hey, you want to do a crossover?" But did you guys have to flush out an entire thing, or did he already have some semblance of an idea of what he wanted to do, and then you guys just collaborated at that point?
I don't know if he had it from the get-go, but it was sort of the seed of that whole thing of the way they would cross over, and the sort of the giant Grim Reaper mech at the end. That was all part of his initial sort of pitch to me.
Well, I'm glad it got made, man. Some of these names are a little bit difficult, so I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I think this one's Ildru Veneer, and like I said, I'm sorry if I butcher your name. Who is the true keeper of the Reaper?
You know how I said I wasn't working on anything earlier? I kind of lied.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mentioned that I found out I had Asperger's, and it's made me reflect on my life and the decisions I've made and the way I am. And I realized that like that's very much where Billy and Mandy came out of as well. So I am writing a Billy and Mandy sort of movie.
Mhm.
Nobody's asked for this. Like I can't say it's ever going to be on the air, but I'm working on it, and it does answer that question.
Beautiful, man. Before we or after we wrap up, if you got like 2 minutes, I want to talk to you real quick.
Sure.
Just you know some stuff, right? But nonetheless, man, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. This one's a hard one. Baka, shit. Baka. I'm just gonna leave it at that one. I can't read the rest of it. Which episode was the hardest to write for? I don't like asking those type of questions, but I got to imagine that if it was super difficult for you to remember or super difficult for you to write, you'd probably remember. Is there one that sticks out that might have just been too hard?
Billy and Mandy was a premise-driven show, so that meant that basically I would write most of the episodes not as scripts but as outlines. So it would be I would try to keep it to a page if I could, just a typed page, and it would be an 11-minute episode, and I would have like 20 of these or whatever, and I would stick them in a little outbox on my door, and the artist would come by and pick out, you know, a handful and read them and decide which one they wanted to do. And they would take over kind of the writing from there. So for me, unless it was something like I always tried to storyboard a couple of my own each season, and there were certain episodes that I did get, you know, passionate about that I wanted to see executed in a specific way, and I would try to do those ones myself if I could.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the frustrations with writing on Billy and Mandy just came from running out of time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you give it to a board artist and they have 4 weeks to do a board, uh, and we would pitch it I think the third week. So um, if something goes wrong and executives don't like it and you have to change something, like we did occasionally come to the point where like you just don't have any time and you have
Yeah.
to let something go that you don't feel good about. Um, and I think probably a couple of my least favorite episodes are like the very last ones,
Mm-hmm.
just because we were working on so many other things at the same time, like Billy and Mandy's Big Boogie Adventure and kind of the beginnings of Underfist. And I don't know. I blame myself. I blame myself for everything. But yeah, just there's like that one with the camera that takes a picture of people's souls, and I don't hate the one where Billy has the Mexican wrestler brother, but it could have been better.
Um, Little Studio Planet One wants to know: is there any series or properties out there that you'd be interested in adapting and putting your own spin on?
Yeah.
Which ones speak to you the most?
No, I had a blast on Scooby Doo. Under the right circumstances, I would love to come back and do more Scooby Doo. I mean, yeah, just I think my thing has always been like, why keep remaking everything? Like, I just feel like the world is drowning in remakes sometimes, but that's the world. So uh, I was really against working on like library properties for a long time, and now I have sort of come around to like try to figure out which ones I feel like I would be right for. And I do feel like I enjoy Scooby, and it would be fun to do something, Warner Brothers related with those classic characters. I did a little dip into Thundar the Barbarian on the second Scooby Doo that I worked on, and I would love to go back and do more with him at some point in the future.
That would be really, really fun. Um, who's your Shaggy? Red shirt or green shirt?
Oh, green shirt shaggy.
Really? Green's my
Yeah,
favorite color.
it's it's impressed on me somehow.
Yeah, green's my favorite color, but there was something about the reluctant werewolf that just struck me so much as a kid. I loved that era, I guess. Um, AP underscore Green Penguin, great name. They want to know. Well, we already talked about that because you just mentioned it. So he was asking if any chance of bringing the show back. Um, Number 555 wants to know: have you tried to contact Cartoon Network to get Underfist greenlit?
I mean, yeah, that was over a decade ago, but yeah.
I'm assuming they mean just to reintroduce him or try
um,
back again.
I don't think that they would care. I think if anything, I would have to convince them that Billy and Mandy was worth bringing back, and then you could probably eventually get to Underfist. But I think a spin-off of something that they've sort of actively shunned for so long might be a hard sell. It is a completely different regime again now, by the way. Like just this last year, everything changed again.
Mhm.
And I'm actually really kind of hopeful for it. Like it sounds like potentially it's a very cool place. Like I know they're doing another new round of shorts and
Yes.
yeah, so just like the opportunity for like a new generation of people to come in and make cartoons. That's really cool. So
How
high hopes.
how great would it be if you took that portfolio, dust off that portfolio, Maxwell, and send it into him, but see if we can't get more Billy and Mandy too. That'd be great. Just give him the old stuff you gave him. Um, but
I'll see if I can get that portfolio that Nickelodeon lost 20 years ago.
oh man, can you imagine though? I know you said that they lost it again, but did you ever originally, or did you ever eventually get it back completely, or is it
No,
still?
it was just gone forever.
Oh man, somebody's out there. They got it. I guarantee you, it's somewhere. Shadow Chew 419 wants to know if you could come back and well, shit. You already answered that one. However, if you could come back and do one last Billy and Mandy movie, we just talked about that. What would it be about? So I don't want you to spoil anything. However, what do you think it would be about, or what would you love to tell if you only had one story left in you of Billy and Mandy? How would you want to wrap that up? I don't really want to, go too much into what you're writing and what you're doing now.
Well,
I don't want anything to
like
be
like
spoiled.
I said, I'm not a big fan of reboots and sequels, and so knowing that Billy and Mandy is sort of a satire, I would assume it would be a highly satirical
Yeah,
reboot of Billy and Mandy.
beautiful. All right. Bastard Son 93 wants to know, what are your thoughts on today's cartoons?
It's a mixed bag. There's not like a place that I go to for cartoons anymore. Like I don't just sit down and watch like a batch of Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network cartoons. Uh, it's kind of all over the map. Like there's some adult stuff I like, some kids stuff I like. Uh,
What are some of the things that strike out right now to you that you watch or you really enjoy watching?
uh, I mean, Rick and Morty's hilarious. That's
Fantastic.
top tier adult stuff. I haven't seen a lot of the brand new Cartoon Network stuff. Like I kind of fell off toward the end of Steven Universe, so
Yeah.
that's a mystery area to me. I feel like I don't really have like a kids cartoon series I'm watching right now.
Mhm.
I actually never have seen The Legend of Korra, so I think that's the next on my list. My friend's bugging me about that.
Spoiler alert, me neither. I just started watching The Last Airbender, but to be fair, there was so many great stuff coming in on Cartoon Network when that was out. I didn't have time for Nickelodeon. So sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
so that there's some of that I'm doing too, where it's like I'm going back into the past and watching things that I didn't watch.
Mhm.
Uh, I wish I could remember the name. It's visually stuck with me. It's like Poo Car or something. It's this weird Japanese like stop motion looking cartoon. I think it's actually CG, but it's about uh guinea pigs that are cars. And there's like people that get inside them and drive. It's weird. It's so weird, but yeah,
You remember
I
those?
don't know what they're saying, but I like it.
I think it was it Kia, the hamsters and stuff that would dance and shit in those cars back in the early 2000s. Maybe it was Kia or hamsters. That's what was the first thought I came of, or the first thought that came to mind when you started talking about fucking gerbils turning into cars. Wild shit out there. If I could give you one recommendation, I don't know if you've watched
Yeah.
it, but regular show. Have you watched that one?
Oh yeah. I don't really know JG well, but I know
Yeah.
JG.
Yeah, that is a phenomenal. That cartoon specifically got me back into animation. I don't know what it was. I do know what it was. It was my little kid. He's probably 4 years old. We started watching the show after my last deployment, my third deployment in a row. We started watching the show when I came home, and it's very hard to come home, from being gone 8, 9, 10 months, and then your kid just growing up. I mean,
Sure,
especially
that
those
must be
first,
nuts.
it was wild, man, because I leave my first deployment and he's not talking. He's like 2 months old. I come back and he's already said his first words. He's already walked. He's already fell and then, got his first cut and all this other stuff. So I missed so much of his life. And it was so difficult coming home and trying to just be the new guy, right? Because he was always attached to mom because mom had to play both roles while I was gone, right? And I tried everything to just like get a relationship. It's not like we didn't have any relationship, but it was very difficult. It was like, what is this? Why is this roommate here talking to me? Right? That's what it kind of felt like. It felt like being a roommate with my son. Um, and then he was watching cartoons one day, and he flipped through, and in the regular show, and I see this fucking raccoon throwing his arm up, going whoa, and I'm like, whoa, change it back, change it back, change it back. And he started watching. He's like, you watch this? And I was like, no, but do you? And he's like, yeah, it's funny. And we started watching it. And then it was the coolest thing, man, because I would come home and we would have these storm doors, right? So we had the door open, these glass storm doors. And then he knew I got home around the same time almost every single day. So it was pre-programmed in his head. He's like, I'm gonna wait by the door and dad sees me. I'm gonna throw my little arm up and we're gonna go, whoa. And it would be funny because he would wait till he sees me and I see him like doing a little dancing type of thing. He's like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. So he throws his hand up and he starts screaming, whoa. And then I would point to him and I'd do it too. And if I didn't do that, he would do it until I did it, right? So I'd walk in, I'd put my stuff down. He's just going, whoa. My wife hated it. It was the most annoying thing in the world to him. But it was a little bonding thing that we did. And I'll be ever grateful for that show, for not only for getting me back into animation, but to give and bridge a gap that I had with my son because of me just being gone on a consistent basis. So I always try to tell everybody, if you haven't watched that one, watch that one. Just
Yeah. I feel like JG he succeeded at something I always wanted to do, which is sort of find the perfect mix between like a kids cartoon and a sitcom. Like if I ever go to Comic-Con and there's like somebody comes up to me and they're like, "Hey, I watched your show with my kid." Like that's the number one for me. Like
yeah.
that's where I'm happiest, I think. So yeah, ideally, I know it's a little, it's got some butts, it's got some farts, but
Yeah.
hopefully it's a show for everybody.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I've been having my son watch everything that I watched growing up because I want him to understand like how great cartoons are and how great they were.
Why
Right?
is Daddy this way?
Why is Daddy crazy? Let me show you the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and you'll see where my moral compass is. But no, like so he's seen. I think we're on season 2. I think HBO Max is fantastic because they got everything. So I've been showing him a little bit of everything, and he really enjoys Billy and Mandy. So you've got another generation of kids coming up on your shows. But getting back to it, JL Delbert wants to know. Oh no, excuse me. KZ Artist wants to know. What did you originally have planned for finishing the show, or was what you did what you originally wanted to do? It just came a little bit sooner.
I mean, as far as finishing Billy and Mandy goes, like we got more time than I ever thought we would get. Like once we passed 52 episodes, I was in shock. Like and I never really had a plan for an ending because uh just the nature of 7-minute and 11-minute cartoons in those days were that you really weren't allowed to change anything like
Yeah.
ever, because the idea was out of that batch of 52 or 76 episodes, the networks need to be able to pick out any one of them and air it in any order they please. So there couldn't be really a story stringing it together. And even though like it's something I've always been interested in is more serialized storytelling. It's just that wasn't on the menu. So I did get to slip in little things that we built on over time, like Irwin's lineage and Nurgle Jr. getting born. That was always kind of in the plan, but I didn't even put that in the Bible because I knew they would make me take it out. Just because it was like a radical change to the, the structure of the show. But
I gotta say, I am deathly afraid of spiders, and the only one that I would never squash. And I don't kill spiders. I have my wife that's pregnant, and my son do it because I'm. That is one of the most crippling fears that I have. I don't know what it is about them. I got bit when I was real young. Maybe that's what it was. But I see them, and I break. Like I start getting like a sweat on my back. Like it's just something about them. And Jeff the spider is the only one that I would not squash. So I appreciate.
he would appreciate that.
Yeah. So JL Delbert wants to know, what was the decision to split Grim and Evil into two shows? Was it ratings? And I'm assuming he's talking Grim and Evil. Was it ratings slash popularity of the Billy and Mandy segments, or was it they just wanted more shows?
It was actually, I was saying about 7 and 11-minute cartoons earlier. It was a shift in the way Cartoon Network was producing things, in that they used to do 7-minute cartoons. So you get 3 7 minutes per half hour. And generally it would be Dexter's Lab, Dial M for Monkey, Dexter's Lab. So there would be what we'd call a middle cartoon, and Cow and Chicken had that too with I Am Weasel.
Yeah.
So when Billy and Mandy started, they were like, well, I had already done the pilot for Evil, so they were like, well, do you want Evil to be your middle cartoon? And I was like, yeah, can we call the show Grim Evil? And they were like, yeah, because that's going to sell. But we did it. And yeah, so I think, I don't, maybe that had something to do with it too. But at one point they were like, hey, we want to, split the shows into their own thing. So, because we're doing, 11-minute now, and we don't want to have just one Billy and Mandy and one Grimm, because Billy and Mandy was, I think Billy and Mandy was doing better in the ratings. But so basically, they, to Cartoon Network's credit, they did give me the choice of which series to continue full time. So what we did was, yeah, it got split into the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy and Evil Con Carne, and they let us finish out one season of Evil before letting it go. And that was, I think that was partially just budgetary stuff, but on my end also, it was just like, it was so much work doing kind of those two series at the same time, that after one season of that, I was like, I was okay with letting Evil go.
Thank you. So Rock for the Beat, thoughts on Has Been Hotel, and more specifically Hell of a Boss? I know you made a cameo in the former. I guess they would just want your take on the two shows. What do you
I've made cameos in both of them now.
Ooh.
No, it's great. I think it's incredible what Vivian's managed to do with just her talent and the internet. It's like getting that many people behind you to support something, and then to be able to produce like a cartoon on your own of that quality that's incredible. Like,
yeah,
kudos to her. Like, it's if I had the wherewithal to social media, I would recommend doing it. Like, it's I think she's she's not everybody can just step in and do that, obviously, but awesome.
21 Nasty Naz wants to know, or no, he doesn't want to know anything. He just wants to say big thanks for the show. It was huge for me. Moving Hold wants to know, and this one was an interesting one. Have you heard of Robert Anton and Wilson, or Discordianism? They jokingly have Eris as the goddess, and I was wondering if that inspired your version of the character at all.
Maybe. No, I have read those. I do love Greek mythology, but I also love absurdist, surrealist literature. So yes, it's all of those things.
Beautiful. And then his second question was, what is your favorite joke that Cartoon Network didn't let you do?
I wish that I had written these down, because there were some good ones. But the ones I really remember were less. I mean, sometimes, like, I really wanted to do Billy and Mandy versus the Martians as our big finale video. and they didn't let me do it. And I did it as an episode. And after I did that, I was like, I think they were right. uh, but like as far as just jokes go, like I don't remember any jokes that I really love that I had to let go off the top of my head. Mostly I just remember the ones that are just like stupid standards notes that we got that are, it's just a dumb throwaway joke that gets turned into some horrible sex joke by standards.
Now, this is one that I wanted to know, and it just thought about. I don't know why I didn't think about it when I asked you the crossover earlier. Kids Next Door is one of those ones that, like, if you had every cartoon that was on during that time, and you said, "Hey, man, we're going to take two of these cartoons and do a crossover." Kids Next Door wouldn't have been the one because it was so different. You guys played with, mythology. You guys played with the Grim Reaper and all these other crazy things that were going on. The one that stood out to me that I don't want to say it should have been, because I enjoyed the crossover that you guys did with Kid Next Door. But were any of the other shows, did they reach out or anything like that and possibly do a crossover? I figured Courage, and I don't know if Courage was still going on when you guys were going, at least in the later half of you guys' series. But I feel like that one would have been a perfect one because Courage dealt in the supernatural and the spooky shit. I mean, did anybody else reach out to you other than?
Courage was, like you said, I think it was mostly wrapped by the time we hit sort of our midpoint. So I don't think it would have really gotten onto anybody's radar, though it would have made more sense.
It would have been fun.
But yeah, as time went on, and I think just as everybody's shows kind of matured, and everybody watched each other's stuff, like I think they pretty much all crossed over at least a couple times. We had the big official crossover with the aliens and the cheese. I can't remember what they called that, but that was pretty much all the shows. And there were a couple times. I know there was like a Powerpuff where they borrowed Mandy for something, and of course we borrowed the Powerpuff Girls world and their clothes, at least for a Billy and Mandy. So
no, I thought of it. If we go back in time, I'd love to see that crossover. I think this is just GOHS7. There will be a remake, hopefully one day. Zentopia 31415 wants to know: was Mandy ever happy in her life, or was that an alternative character in an alternative universe if she would have been happy?
This is also a question that is answered in the thing I'm currently writing.
Beautiful. We'll put a pin in that one. Did Billy and
But
Mandy...
I will say, how do you know she's not happy right now?
Oh, yeah, there you go, Zentopia 31415. How do you know? He's got a couple here, or she, excuse me, I apologize. Did Billy and Mandy ever change as they got older? Is that one explained?
Maybe, but I will say it was never my intention originally to age them at all.
Oh,
they were always supposed to just be perpetually
young,
whatever age they are, which I also never defined, much like their last names.
Already answered that one. While creating Grimm, did you ever feel a connection to the supernatural, and did Grimm ever visit you?
No.
That's a good thing.
I've always kind of wanted to like see a ghost or a UFO, but it's just not
in the card.
Not freaking real.
Nerd Festerio wants to know: you've got some current projects you're working on for sure. But is there anything else we haven't talked about that you can talk about?
I don't know. I don't know. At any given point, I'm always thinking about something. There's a thing that might be a video game or might be a show. I don't know.
If you could do either one, I mean, would you want to try video games, or do you just want to stick to cartoons and animation and stuff like that?
I don't know. It's I think I am getting to a point in my career where I'm aging out of the main pool of of employees. Like it is a young person's business, and it's getting, I think, harder as time goes on to find reasonable employment. So I don't know. I wonder sometimes what I can do to just keep my stories going and keep being able to. That was sort of what Dead Meat was all about. Was just my attempt to, I guess, take control back from the entertainment industry and do my own thing. So that didn't work out, but I do have plans to do something.
It didn't
But yeah,
work.
I started out in college working on video games. I used to know C plus, and I don't remember jack shit anymore. But yeah, I've been experimenting around a little bit with stuff like that. There was a Bible that I sort of dumped on the internet for a show called The Upward Expedition that actually came out of a video game that I was thinking about designing. So I don't know. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I think I'm just now getting to the point where post Dead Meat, I can think about doing something again and not want to like throw up in my mouth.
I love your honesty, man. You're a fantastic person to talk to. Kids WB wants to know, and I don't know where he's going with this one, so you might be able to maybe to flesh this one out. Thoughts on Dexter's Lab? I don't really know what he means by that. Did you ever try putting main characters as a cameo in your show like they did with Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo, and Foster? So I'm assuming it's a small crossover like we just talked about, but were there any other characters or any other shows that they wanted to take Billy and Mandy and put them in that you know of?
No, I know some of that happened after I left. Like I think they showed up in like a Gumball or maybe a Steven Universe or something. I'm not entirely sure. I know I've seen a couple screenshots, but yeah, that's about all I can think of.
Sonic the something hedge. I don't know what that is. Uh, where was the big changes or no, excuse me, Big Chungus episode? And have you seen the Buenos Dias Mandy video?
I don't know what the Big Chungus video is, and
Okay,
I have seen the Buenos Dias Mandy thing.
is
Yes.
it worth watching?
I think it's just a comic book or a series of comic panels,
Okay.
and it's NSFW.
You brought up Dead Meat just a minute ago. Did your experience with Dead Meat completely and permanently put you off of crowdfunding projects?
It should, but is that a world I can afford to live in? Is the thing. Like I don't know. I'm still digging myself out of the Dead Meat hole to some degree, but like looking like that's the thing with like Hell of a Boss and what Vivian's doing is like it shows you the potential of what you can do with crowdfunding. But like I think if I were more integrated into the internet and if I enjoyed you know talking to people and messaging people at odd hours, I could do something like that. It's more of a question, I guess, of would anybody trust me to crowdfund something after a flop? And do I feel good enough doing that myself? And yeah, I don't know. It's not something I'm going to say no to
Yeah,
because I do very much still want to tell stories and do things. It's just I got to find a sustainable way to do it, whatever that is.
it's understandable, man. And I want and myself and so many fans want to hear the stories that you want to tell. I can promise you that. Simon's UPS wants to know which character in Grimm resonates with you personally the most.
I've always said that they're all three of the mains are different aspects of my personality, so it is very hard to
Narrow in on one.
yeah.
We'll do it this way. Which personality traits of the three, right, do you line up with the most? And not saying you got to pick one of the three, but taking one from Graham and one from Billy and one from Mandy, which ones of their personality traits do you think lend itself to you and vice versa?
I mean, if I guess if I was going to pick positive traits,
You want to do one negative, one positive?
sure. No, Mandy's always in control of her situation. I think she's a little too harsh sometimes. Billy, of course, is free and easy, and he's always happy, but he's a moron. And if he wasn't best friends with the Grim Reaper, he'd be dead like 400 times over. uh, yeah, and Grim, he's he's learning some hard lessons. Like I think he had sort of an entitled upbringing, and he's getting schooled right now. So
Beautiful. More from Simon's UPS. What are your favorite sci-fi and horror films?
there's so many, so many. Yeah, this is just going to be like whenever somebody asks me what my favorite horror or sci-fi movie or any favorite anything is, like it will be different tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I was literally just talking to somebody else about like my childhood where I was just afraid of like everything, and it took me so long to get to the point where I could watch any sort of gore or even just death, like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like
Yeah.
I would fast forward through for years until I finally got to the point where I could watch it. But the movie that kind of broke me out of that was RoboCop,
Okay, that's a good one.
which is it's sci-fi. There's a little bit of horror in there maybe. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, Star Wars, obviously. There's loads and loads of references to stuff that I love in Billy and Mandy. So hopefully some of that comes through.
Well, it does for sure, and it's always hard asking you guys absolutes on you know something like that. Like, what's your favorite movie? Like, obviously you're gonna have some, but it's so hard to pick just one because there's so many. A movie on the right day that you might have not liked 6 years ago hits you because they're talking about something you might be going through, and that might just completely change and upheave your entire thought process. I'm like, well, shit, I thought A was my favorite movie, but I just saw C, and fuck, C blows A out of
Yeah,
the water. C now.
during the pandemic, I watched Annihilation. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Have not.
It's Natalie Portman and a couple of other women. They're all scientists. They get sent into this weird anomaly. It's very Lovecraftian in a non-obviously Lovecraftian way.
Mhm.
But like I watched it the first time and I got done and I was like, I don't know, man, I don't like it. And then I just thought about it like nonstop for like 5 days. And then I watched it again and I was like, I fucking love this movie. I don't know. It's just sometimes it takes a minute to sink in, I guess.
And you got to sit back and really think about what you watched or thought about what you just seen, so you could really, give yourself an opinion on it. There is one, and I can't think of the name, but when we have just a 1 or 2 minute chat after we finish this up, I'll give it to you. But there was a Korean zombie. I think it was Korean.
Is this Train to Busan?
No, it came out
Okay.
last year. I saw it during the pandemic. It was picture oh shit, what was the movie Cloverfield, where like it was all POV shot, right? But it was this one guy. He's in his apartment and I think he was playing World of Warcraft, right? And then he's one of those Twitch streamers, and the world just essentially goes all zombie. And he's either in Korea, China, or Japan, one of those three countries. I'm sorry, I'm blanking. But it's a foreign film, and his family is somewhere, and he's the only one there, and he's trying to survive. And the apartment he is in has thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and he has to try to survive. And all he does is play video games and drinks Mountain Dew, essentially. And it's him trying to survive. It's a horror movie. It is phenomenal on Netflix.
Did you ever read World War Z?
I haven't.
The book version?
Yeah, I have. What World War Z did you say, or DMZ?
World War
Z.
Z.
Yes, I read it before the movie came out. Yes.
Yeah, me too. But I feel like that there's like a section of that that's like very similar, where it's like a Japanese kid that just plays video games.
Yeah.
And he's like completely out of shape, but like has a samurai sword and manages to get out of his building or something.
Maybe.
But it sounds like a cool movie. You'll have to.
Yeah, it's dope.
Let me know if you remember the name.
Oh, I'll look it up right as we're talking and shit, and then I'll give it to you. It's a phenomenal movie. Really, really good. Oh, this one's really, really good one. 151 Bryce wants to know, how do you decide what voices to use for the characters? As far as whenever the voice actors come, do you have that general output, or are the voice actors trying an entire plethora of different voices and then you get to pick from there?
I guess it's like with a lot of things in, I guess, any industry, like you kind of get to know people and what they're capable of. And once you've been around for a while, like, like the broad strokes, at least, of like what Grey Delisle can do or what Maurice LaMarche can do. And so some of your decisions get made that way. Billy and Mandy in the beginning, like I didn't really have that knowledge. So back then it was just audio tapes, and I just got like this massive box of audio tapes dropped on my desk, and I listened to probably hundreds of just people doing random auditions for other things, and like if somebody sounded good, we'd have them do a read for Billy and Mandy, and they'd send in a tape.
Yeah.
So that's how I found Richard and Gray, and Grim actually was the hardest to cast for whatever reason. Just like I was determined that he was going to be sort of an uptight British guy. Uh, in my mind, he was kind of based on the original Dr. Smith from Lost in Space. And we actually had Dr. Smith from Lost in Space come in, but he was like, 400 years old at that point, and he was very nice, but he just didn't really seem into it. So yeah, just started pulling in random people, and between takes, Greg Eagles was doing a British thing, and then between takes, he just did this sort of Jamaican thing, and I was like, do that, and that just stuck. So yeah, that's how that happened. It can kind of come from anywhere. Like Hector Con Carne from Evil Con Carne was Phil Lamar, who I found doing that voice essentially as a Mexican wrestler on Mad TV in the early 90s.
That dude, he's come up like 2 or 3 times on a podcast. I'm gonna have to see if he'd like to come on too. That dude does not get brought up enough. Phil Lamar, fantastic actor.
Yeah, he does so many different voices. Like he was, I was talking to somebody else about this the other day. They were like, "Yeah, wasn't he Irwin's dad?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he was also Irwin's grandma, and he was Dracula, and just like.
It's amazing, like what these guys and girls can do with just the pitch of their throat and their diaphragm, and just how they can change and do this and sound like this but not sound like that. It's just wild to sit here and think about. This one might be a difficult question. It's from 151 Bryce as well. Do you know who the second choices for Grim, Billy, and Mandy were if Greg, Gray, and Richard weren't cast?
I can't remember.
Okay. DTJ20 wants to know, what do you think about all the fan art and fanfics about your characters? Have you read any of them or seen? I'm pretty sure you've seen the fan art.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I always like it when I feel like I don't own these characters anymore. Like they're owned by Cartoon Network, but I would like to think that I have just gifted them to the people. So yeah, anytime somebody's like, "Hey, can I use your character in like a comic or whatever?" I'm like, A, it's not my character anymore, and B, yeah, please. Like, yeah, I would like. That's kind of how I like to imagine that their adventures will go on. Is just somebody else will make it part of their headcanon.
Beautiful. Now you kind of answered this one, but I wanted to bring it back around because you said you didn't want them to be grown up. You wanted them to be as kids. What do you imagine the characters would be like today? Obviously he wanted to know as adults or teens, but you said you had no thought of them being grown up. They would just be who they are. Do you see those characters evolving into a different character possibly down the road, still as kids, but do you see them, taking away from the norm of what they are?
I suppose if I was really going to think deeply about it, like, I mean, I don't know. It's like they're cartoons and they weren't designed to change, but people do. So there's potentially something interesting there.
Beautiful. ZL wants to know. This one is phenomenal. I never thought about this until they brought it up. Billy's nose is similar to Stimpy's, and Stimpy's voice actor is Billy West. Was this a tribute or a coincidence?
That's a coincidence. But Billy always had a very big nose, but it became a little bit bigger over the course of production just because I got vindictive. That was like one thing that the Cartoon Network did push back on early was they did not like that his nose was so big. So I had to go through a special focus group just about Billy's nose where there were like 10 or 12 different Billy nose sizes, and Cartoon Network picked one that was like 3 sizes smaller than the one I liked. And I was just so annoyed about it that I just continued with the one I liked anyway. And nobody ever mentioned it again. It was weird.
Well, at least you got through, right? Black Rose Valkyrie wants to know, how far did you try to push the boundaries on this show?
I mean, there was definitely a part of me that was a little bit of an edgelord back then and trying to push things. But mostly like the spooky stuff, like that's kind of where we were in the early first couple seasons, and that stuff was easy to get through. And I think just because they didn't know what to do with it, like they hadn't seen too much spooky stuff yet, so they just didn't really call it. What was the rest of the question?
Just the boundaries, like how far you tried to push them.
Yeah, that, I mean, really, it was sort of, I got into the mindset where it was just about survival, because we did get canceled or almost canceled so many times. So a lot of it was like a joke would play in the room, and I would be like, I'm sending that one through. Like any laugh I get is a good sign. But yeah, it was never really the intention to have like dirty jokes or anything like that, on my part anyway. And I think a couple of those, I think some of that is just like my personality and things that some people think are edgy, I guess I don't. And I think some of it just like slipped through because I'm not always as connected to broader society as I could be. Like I do remember there was that hip hop episode, and the board artist for that threw in Dave Chappelle's skeet 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 joke, and I had not seen Dave Chappelle at that point, so I sent that through the network because I just thought it was a funny noise. So yeah, occasionally I would catch some shit for doing something dumb like that, but
Dude, Dave
for the most part, Cartoon Network was they were great. Like they really did support me up until that last week.
I'm so glad you brought up Dave Chappelle, and I did not make that reference to that. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder what they were going for. And then you're like, oh yeah.
Oh no, that joke didn't end up in the show. Like they never would have let that happen. No.
I was about to say I don't remember that happening, but I'm so glad it did. So we got two more here. I'm gonna butcher this one. Welly Manoramus wants to know, what inspired you to create the underworld? And have you ever heard the Swedish dub of Grim Adventures?
I don't think I've heard the Swedish one. I've heard the Dutch one.
Okay. And
sorry?
Oh, no, go ahead. What inspired you to create the underworld?
Mostly the necessity to have a place that was part of Grimm's life that didn't look like hell. So we just it was just sort of a challenge to come up with something that was kind of new and weird and different and didn't look like a literal Christian hell.
And last one from the fans here. Rachel San Diego wants to know. This one is fun, and this is why I saved it for the last one. What would Billy and Mandy look like if it were set in the 80s? I'm picturing Lost Boys-esque or Goonies-esque. That's what I think of.
Would it still be animated? I was going with Cross, but I don't know.
Let's do both. Let's do an animated. What would Billy and Mandy look like to you in the 80s from the animation standpoint and from
probably the Smurfs, I guess.
Yeah.
I assume so. Yeah, live action though, I don't know. This is a bit of a segue, but somebody told me I should watch Psycho Goreman, which is about it just came out like last year. It's like an indie horror, I guess, comedy.
Okay.
But I know it's like two little kids, and I don't know if he's an alien or a demon or what, but they're paired up with this creature who just, I guess, murders people. I don't know. It sounds similar enough that I want to check it out, but maybe it would be that. I don't know.
Beautiful. But nonetheless, man, it'd be interesting to see what Billy and Mandy would look like 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2020s. Who knows? Maybe we'll get that. Is there anything else that maybe we didn't hit on that you'd like to tell the fans? Or do you feel like we've said all we could really say? Obviously there's going to be stories coming down the pike with Maxwell, but is there anything else that you'd like to, put out there?
I think we did pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like we did.
Yeah, I feel satisfied. The cat and the dog slept through the whole thing. Hopefully nobody else did.
No, I don't think they will, man. Like I said, when I posted the picture of Billy and Mandy and Grimm, and I put it out there, it was one of those things where for the first 2 hours I had to set my phone, and there's only been two other posts well, two including yours, that I've had to do that with, where I had to set my phone on the other side of the room because I was tired of feeling the vibrate. I was tired of seeing it light up. I was trying to watch cartoons or I was trying to watch a movie or something like that. And it just kept going ding, 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 ding. So for just a little while, I felt like what it was like to be not so much Maxwell, but somebody in your position, right? You guys are just always getting bombarded with, hey man, do my or do my podcast or do this thing or do this, do that, do that. And you guys are always stretched so thin. And I appreciate you coming on is what I'm getting at.
I'd like to apologize for all the Billy and Mandy fans.
Why would you
blowing up your phone?
Oh no.
No. I mean, I guess if I have one other thing to say, it's just like we did get canceled and almost canceled so many times, and every time we came back, and indeed the very first time we were brought into being, it was because of the fans. So I definitely appreciate everybody out there who, sent back some love.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was being completely facetious when I said I was getting agitated because I love fan interaction. I really, really do, because I think that's something that's lost in a lot of podcasting, especially when you have something where I don't see myself as a journalist. I don't see myself as an interviewer. I really don't see that. I just like talking to the guys and the girls that just made life so much fun back in the day. And it's always fun to see what people can come up with as far as questions, because it starts to make me think, I'm like, oh shit, why did I never look at, that scene that way? When you start seeing everybody else's opinion or everybody else's, like, how they look at something or how they take something in and then regurgitate it, you're like, shit, man, that's such an astute point that I was just laughing because he was digging in his nose and then Grim fell and his head fell off. But now there's a reason because of all of this stuff happening. And I'm just using it as a hyperbole at this point, but there's a reason. And then you're so smart, you did that. So there's a few questions in here that I didn't know nothing about, case in point being a few of the topics we talked about earlier that we discussed. And then I learned something from these guys and girls that submitted all these questions. So I appreciate when the fans do send in questions. Just sometimes I just want to watch cartoons and not feel my phone vibrate. But nonetheless, man, I really, really appreciate what you did, Maxwell. I can't wait to see what you got coming down the pike. I really, really hope that if you do want to tell that Billy and Mandy movie story, if it turns into another series, what have you, I hope that they give you your justice. I hope that they give you everything you need to set up, because if anything, us fans deserve it to see this, but you deserve it more than anybody else to finally get to put a bow on whatever stories that you got left up here with these characters that you created, man. I can't thank you enough, and I really appreciate you and everything you've done. I know you don't take compliments so well, so I won't go too far past that. Thank you is essentially is what I'm getting at.
Well, you're welcome.
He's been Maxwell. I've been Julian. This has been the What's in My Head podcast, the podcast for animation, pop culture, and eventually something else. But right now I'm having a lot of fun in animation. Thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you guys really, really soon. This podcast was presented by the Epic Sewers Podcast Network, the home of all your pop culture podcast needs, with shows like Epic Tales from the Sewer, the Spoiler Force Podcast, Creator Con Q&A, Comic Watchers, and the What's in My Head podcast. Follow us